Yo, what up, people? Today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite reads of this year, and it is Down and Out in Paris and London by George Orwell. Now, this was a George Orwell book that I hadn't heard of, and I kind of bought it on a whim. Once I heard about it, I immediately got it off of thrift books and got it sent here. And then I picked it up and pretty much read it in a few days, and which doesn't happen too often to me. Usually they sit around on my shelf and then I finally get around to it. But and I really enjoyed it. It comes in at 230 pages. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. It was published in 1933. And yeah, and this is like the third thing I read by George Orwell. I read Shooting an Elephant, a short story, in college, which I enjoyed, and then I read 1984, which I liked. I just wasn't too crazy about. Maybe because there was so much hype around it, I expected it to be like one of the best books I've ever read, and I was kind of disappointed. It was good. But I think I enjoyed this better. This is it's a memoir, kind of travel journal style written. It's all nonfiction about him being homeless and penniless in Paris and London. That's what Down and Out means. It means not having any money. And some of my favorite books are kind of counterculture books where they talk about just normal everyday people. And kind of realism, naturalism, all that type of stuff. I really like when a story is told how it actually happened, and because those in itself are crazy enough. They don't really need to be made into fiction usually. But so honestly, there wasn't really anything I disliked about it. I mean, there's not really a beginning and an end. It just kind of starts and ends when it ends. And the first half is about him being in Paris, and the second half is about him being in London, and him being in and out of these kind of Salvation Army type housing. But it's just brutal how they're treated. It's like it's pretty much prison, just a little bit better. And during this time, wasn't good. So yeah, they're fed just bread and butter. They pretty much survive on tea and coffee. And they get shoved into these small rooms that don't even have beds, that they just lay down on the floor with another person, and they're shut in there and locked in for 12 hours of the night. And they're crowded in people that haven't showered in months, if not years, and are sick and coughing, and no telling what they have. And at some of the housings, in the morning they have people make sure they're not sick or have any contagious diseases, at least, to see if they're allowed to be there. But it was just crazy, and a lot of it's about him working behind the scenes in the restaurant industry in Paris, because a lot of times you just read about kind of like the Hemingway side, where they're drinking and eating at these fancy restaurants, and they're not really, they don't talk about the servers or the people that are working the host stands or the people that are the dishwashers or the cooks or anything like that. And this focuses on the background, behind the scenes of how everything is actually treated and what the workforce is actually like and everything. And I thought it was just really insightful and a really unique perspective that you don't see too often. And I really enjoyed that. And there's some points where he didn't have anything to eat for a week at a time and just laid in bed and was too hungry to do anything, didn't have any money to do anything. mean, it's depressing, but I like to read about the reality of people's situations, and I'm very interested in like the perspective of homelessness and what it's like to be homeless, and also kind of what comes with that. Reading about going into madness and people kind of losing themselves or just losing it in general and not really having a grasp on reality and what that's like, because a lot of homeless people are crazy. I mean, they've lost their minds. I mean, you could argue everyone's crazy, but I mean, just going into madness, whether it be drugs or loneliness or just being on the streets, life itself, like people can go great crazy here, and it does happen. But I feel like not a lot of people talk about it. So a lot of the people he meets are, kind of crazy homeless people that are very unique. People that draw cartoons, like political cartoons on the sidewalk for change, just to give someone a reason. They're not necessarily begging, because it was illegal at this time to beg for money. So people could just get arrested, and why don't they get arrested so they have a place to stay? The jail's so bad that they would rather not go, and that these terrible homes that are pretty much, that are worse than jails now. They would rather pay and go there than get arrested and go to jail. That's how bad it was there. But it's just really interesting to see the real types of people. Like, he talks to so many different types of homeless people that's been homeless for years, if not decades, and just living that life and are completely accepted their situation. And it's just really interesting to check out that perspective. So, so yeah, I didn't write too much down. I didn't really. Most people know about George Orwell, so I didn't think about much talking about his life. But like he was born in India, moved to England, lived there for a long time until he graduated, until he got out of school. Then he went into the army and went back to India, which is where he got inspiration. Well, it's not really inspiration; it's an actual experience of him shooting an elephant, which he writes about, which is a famous short story. And then, but yeah, and then he kind of becomes a writer. I didn't write too many details down, but he's obviously one of the most talked about writers, just in general. One of the biggest English writers. Just to read you a quote real quick. There were eccentric characters in the hotel. The Paris slums are a gathering place for eccentric people. People who have fallen into solitary, half-mad grooves of life and given up trying to be normal or decent. Poverty frees them from ordinary standards of behavior, just as money frees people from work. Some of the lodgers in our hotel lived lives and were curious beyond words. Sorry, I thought I just saw one. I think. But, yeah. Sorry. I should have written them down before. But that kind of gives you a sense if you're interested in characters or people in general, or just understanding the perspective that's not usually seen in books or in writing in general, or I don't see at least. I'm definitely wanting to get into that area. It's sort of kind of like a counterculture. But yeah, if you're interested in anything like that, definitely check it out. It was one of my favorite reads so far. And yeah, thanks for tuning in.